back to our PDF document here. So, working with files and folders. So back in the good old days, good old DOS days, and when we talk about Windows 95, we're still kind of talking about DOS days. And our files, remember, we can only have like 8 letters for the name and then 3 letters for the extension of a name. But now, people who started with, probably Windows XP or Windows 7 or 8 and 10, now you look at these file names and they make sense. They can be a long phrase. They can actually be up to 260 characters long. Like my cat's name is Freddy and he loves to play with string balls. I mean, that could be the name of a file, .doc, okay? Because if you don't put the .doc on there, what's going to happen? It's not going to know what program to open it up with. So if you edited it, if you created that file with like Word, it's going to have a DOC or DOCX extension on it. And so it's going to get, when it gets saved into your folder, if you have any kind of icon view in your folder, it's going to have a W for Word if you edit it with Word. And, and you can have nice long names with it. It was really kind of a pain to deal with it back in the 8.3 days, especially when you got thousands of files. But nowadays you have hundreds of thousands of files, and it's a little easier to recognize things when they have a usable phrase or name that you understand. Okay, so back to user profiles. My question here is, where are my files? Okay, so we looked. They were on the C drive for most of you, in a folder called Users, and then under a profile with the name that you logged onto your computer with. So we'll go back and look at that, but in mine it's going to be C:\\, it's going to have users, /BDT, and it's going to have documents and pictures and videos and things like that are all going to be subfolders in my profile. Now, the special thing about profiles is, get back up here, there's these two little, I'm just going to give a couple seconds to this, ntuser.dat and ntuser.ini. Every profile has a couple of hidden files, and now that I've showed you how to look at hidden files, I'm going to tell you that if you don't want to be losing a whole lot of stuff and not being able to get into your stuff, don't delete these files, okay? Don't delete ntuser and ntuser.ini. Those are both hidden files. The ntuser, it contains the settings and preferences for you as a user, so you really don't want to get rid of that. And the ntuser.ini, it has information about if you have a roaming profile. And a roaming profile would be, for example, if you save your profile onto OneDrive, which is Microsoft's cloud drive. If you logged into your computer with a Microsoft user account, and Microsoft always tries to get you to use a Microsoft user account when you set up your computer, it's going to put your profile on the internet into the cloud, and every time you log onto your computer, it's going to go out to the cloud and it's going to read your profile. After it reads it the first time, it's going to make a local copy on your computer, so it doesn't always have to go out to the internet, so you don't always have to be connected to the internet. But the home of your roaming profile on OneDrive is going to be out there, and that's going to contain your settings and information. So if you do log in with an MSN or Hotmail account or some other Microsoft login, you are going to have a roaming profile that's kept in the cloud. And that's why this file is so important for that. But like I said before, the question that comes up most of the time, what if someone needs help moving their files over from an old computer to a new computer? Well, just think of it this way. Pull it from their old profile, put it into their new profile. If it's in the pictures folder, put it into the pictures folder on the new computer, and you'll be just fine. And all of the newer versions of Windows, starting from, I believe it's 7, 8, and 10. How come there's no 9?
Yeah.
Well, 7, 8, 9. 7, 8, 9.
Oh, 7, 8, 9.
Oh.
Pretty bad, huh? Okay.
Sick.
7, 8, 9. Okay, so I think that's going to answer a lot of questions for a lot of people who are getting new computers in the club and are moving things into different parts of the operating system, or moving files around their computer. To understand what your profile is, once more. If you're in the file manager here, and you go, if I go to the C drive here, and I go into users, and I go into BDT, what am I going to find in BDT? That's my profile. I'm going to find my documents and my downloads and things like that. Has anybody? There's some good backup programs for now. There's a file history backup program in Windows 10. If you're using Windows 10, you should check it out. What it does is it uses your profile to gather all your files and copies all those files onto an external drive.
What does that?
File history.
Why?
Yes.
File history. Yeah, it's under the backup options in your settings. But anyway, if you just copy from one computer all of your documents into another, into like a flash drive or something, or if you're over a network, you can copy it directly to another computer. That way they'll get all of the information that they had on their own computer. Like I said, you can either clean it up here, or else you can clean it up on a flash drive, or just move it all over RAW and clean it up from your new fast computer, where everything's going to work faster and easier. Some interesting things here. If you just want to click on that and select this folder, what if I want to select this folder too? What key do I hold down to do that?
Control.
Yeah, I hold down Control, and then I click there, and if I want to select this one too, I click that one. And now if I want to copy it or delete or whatever, I've got 3 selected there. What if I want to get everything from here down to favorites?
Shift.
I hold down the Shift key. If I hold down the Shift key and I click here, it gets everything in between. Okay? And what if I want to add one more? What do?
Control.
Control, and I click one more. So now I got all those. So that's a good way to be able to select multiple files. What if I want to select them all? Control A.
A.
Selects all your files. So
In
those are
that
called,
folder.
yeah, in that folder. It's only that folder. Keyboard shortcuts are real important to know. We're not going to get into them too much here, but if you're in any word processor or in anything and you go and you click on the edit menu, you'll see like copy will say Control C, or select all will have Control A, things like that. So these little things on top are actually called breadcrumbs. You ever hear that term before? Okay, so these are called breadcrumbs because they take you to get to this point here. You have to drop a few breadcrumbs along the way in order to get there. So first you go to this PC, then you go to the local disk, and then you go to the users folder, then you go to BDT, and then to the little breadcrumbs. And what happens if I click in here? It takes away your breadcrumbs and it just shows you the regular path, the DOS path. C drive, the users folder, BDT is a subfolder of users, which is on the C drive, which is usually the system drive on a computer. Okay. Notice that when I click on these other options on top here, I'm going to get different menus on top here. And the reason this is sticking around is because, and this is called the ribbon bar. What other program do we see the ribbon bar in? Like Microsoft Office? See it in Word and Excel and things like that. The reason you have this ribbon bar is because of this. Back in the good old days, back in the Windows 95 days, and you clicked on something that said like edit over here, you would have like 10 things in the list here you can choose from. Well, there's a heck of a lot of more than 10 things over here. So if they were to list them all from the top all the way down, we'll probably go off this page onto the next one. So they decided to come up with the ribbon bar for easier navigation. The other thing too is if we click on hidden items here, what else are we going to see in that folder? Anything? Da, 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 da.
You have all those hidden.
We have ntuser.dat. We have app data. See that one there? It's a little
3D,
kind of
yeah.
grayed out. What was that last one? So we have a couple more folders. Microsoft Edge backups.
Edge.
See, those are, it's not as bright as that one, it's kind of grayed out.
Yeah,
So those are hidden files. Now, why are they hidden?
she don't use them all the
So
time.
Because you guys are dangerous,
You hid it.
okay? You can break things. But in order to fix things, an administrator needs to know how to get into here, needs to know how to get into here, and needs to know that if he's a smart guy, he's never gonna delete that, okay? So that has his information about his user profile, because remember how we said that? The ntuser.dat has the data about your user profile. But Microsoft, in its infinite wisdom, by default, it hides them from view, and that way, most people don't have to worry about it. Hidden files are, it's really helpful to know how to see your hidden files, because sometimes your problems lie in those hidden files. Especially the app data file. The app data, let's say you have used Thunderbird email, for example, or Outlook email or something like that. If you want to know where your old mail is, it's actually in a hidden folder, in the app data folder, down about 4 more layers in that folder there. So it can actually be recovered if you thought you lost your mail, or you want to move your mail over to a new computer. You can go into the app data folder. So once again, that's a job for an administrator. What's the definition of administrator? And I'm just making this up. Someone who just keeps on trying and trying and trying until they're not willing to give up. If a person's willing to do that, I'd call them an administrator. Okay? And eventually they'll get it. But you have to just keep on trying, keep on practicing. It's important to keep on practicing once you learn some of these things. Another thing people need to do that they don't do nearly enough is they don't right-click on things. What does a right-click do?
Visual menu.
What's that, Tom?
Visual menu.
Yeah, but what kind of menu?
Places you can go. the things you can do.
Context.
Yeah.
Context.
Right, couldn't remember.
So when you click with the left button, the normal button, that does what? That selects something,
Yeah.
okay? When you click with the right button, that gives you context of something you can do. Now, one thing you can do is you can pin it to quick access, okay? So if I have a folder that I use all the time, and let's say it's somewhere way out in the nether reaches of my computer somewhere, but I want to get there all the time, all I have to do is find that folder once and pin it to quick access, and it's going to be right there. So I can quickly get to it. So that's how quick access should be used. These are just pointers, and these are just the defaults that Microsoft gives you because it thinks that you want them. But quick access is really to help find those things that you use all the time, and you want to be able to get to them quickly. So for example, let's go someplace in the documents folder. And I have something called level 2 here. And let's say I need to get to level 2 every day, all the time. I could pin it to quick access, okay? And then eventually it's going to show up right here. And if I want it to stay right there, I just put a little thumbtack in it, and it'll stay right there. So anyway, so that's what the quick access is really for, okay? It's really kind of confusing the way they put it there, because you look at it first, it's basically your profile plus whatever else you want there, okay? But it's really just pointers to things that are part of your profile. And here we see your profile again down here under this PC. And where else do you see it? You see it under the C drive, and you see it under users. And then it's going to have the username. We're going to have two profiles here by default, the user profile that logged on and the public profile. Okay, so so we have this is a copy of this is a copy of most of what's in over here. Now there might be a few differences, but not that many. Here's your desktop, here's your downloads, your pictures, your music, your videos. So that's why they have it there, because this is how people usually want to get there. But as you can see, you can put something from anywhere on your disk. Now we talked briefly about file backup, and we call it file history. That's a new program, really good for backing up every day in the background. What's nice about that is it will back up everything in your profile. And since this has kind of become our de facto profile, you can actually, now that I can actually take files from other users and pin them to my quick access list, and I could back up 2 users from the same profile. Whereas otherwise, each user would have to go into their own profile to back up their own stuff. So if I'm Tom, and I'm the administrator, and I want to back up also Marlene and Bruce's documents, I would just pin them to my profile, and when I ran the file history, I would see them included in there, and I'd be able to back up their stuff as well from a single profile. So it's kind of interesting, and maybe we can play with file history one day. In fact, we probably should. Everyone should get used to using that if you have a Windows 10 machine. Do you have any questions so far? Any burning questions? Okay, now that I know you're understanding everything I'm doing here. I mean, there's just so much here, that it just goes on and on. But let me just kind of recap a little bit. The reason it's so important to understand the file system is navigating around your computer is probably the hardest thing to learn, okay? When you start working, I remember when I first started working with the computer, I would turn the computer on, and my computer actually had a 20 megabyte hard drive in it, so when I turned it on, it would come up to a C:// and it would just blink at me, okay? I didn't know what else to do with it. If I wanted it to stop blinking, all I knew how to do was to press the off button on the computer. And I know I'm not alone, because we probably almost all did that. So went over to a friend's house, and she sat me down in front of her computer, and she had me drink 3 beers, I remember. So I was a lot more relaxed, I'll tell you that. We opened up a word processor, and we put in she had me type a sentence, and she said, let's save it. You hit File and Save, and what do you want to call it? Well, your name is Bruce, let's call it B, period, DOC. Okay, so it became BDoc, and that became my first document I ever saved on the computer. And then she showed me how to find it in my directory of files. So that was the beginning of my journey of learning how to find things on the computer. I still think that navigating around the file system is one of the most difficult things to learn when you first start working with a computer. And this is just a little bit of a primer to give us some clues into how to do it. But learning how to install applications and where the application files go, and how they connect with one another, how to make apples talk to oranges and not apples talk, how to make apples talk to apples and not apples to oranges is really kind of the trick. And the trick is, after you've been doing it for a while, you kind of recognize what the apples look like and what the oranges look like, so you make better decisions. People think you're smart, but all you're really doing is making better decisions because you have more experience. It just takes a little bit of time. And like Tom said earlier, there's all these links in here, and if you're really curious, and I recommend that you do take a little time, and this is one of those messages like you were talking about. So this document is trying to connect to 10forms.com. It's actually a site I go to all the time. It's a site for Windows 10. Learning how to use it. Remember this action for all PDF documents. Now, if I click block, I just can't do anything. I know the website, so I'm going to allow it. Okay? So if you, it's worth doing, allowing it, unless you really feel like you're under attack, for some reason. So we talked about profiles. So what is a profile on your computer? It's where your files are kept on your computer. When you logged in as a username, that user has a profile. It puts permissions on files that allows you to get to those files and administrators, but keeps other people out. You can imagine how that would be really helpful in a corporate or more of a medical environment where you need to keep people out of certain files and things like that. That can all be programmed into the new networking and journal file system. So this is an example of one of those files from 10forms. And another thing I want you to notice too is that in those papers about the Windows file system, you'll notice that they're not all from one place. They might be from Britannica, or they might be from Wikipedia, or they might be from 10forms or something. There's all kinds of different sites in there that can be a resource for you to look at. And those sites that I put in there are pretty safe sites. They're not being blocked. They are places you can visit. And you can also ask different questions there. They have this little search box up here. And you can see this whole thing is about tutorials. There's a whole bunch of tutorials for Windows 10. But this talks about user profiles again, and what, like you have your documents, your downloads, and your favorites, and your links, and your music. It shows you that they're under C, users, username. I didn't make this stuff up, okay? It's out there. And then it'll tell you how to delete it, how to use certain properties and things like that. What I want to mention is that sometimes you might see file system in more than one place. Well, I usually have a link to 2 different articles, so you might, just 2 different ways of looking at the same information. These are called like breadcrumbs again. If you click on this, it will take you to that folder there. It's supposed to take us there. And so here we have all these different forums. You want to learn about networking and sharing, you want graphics cards, sound, software and apps, Microsoft Office and 365, backup and restore. We have different threads on them, and also there are discussion groups and forums and tutorials. It's just a site that has all this kind of stuff on it. So if you're interested in system security or general tips, or you're into Xbox and things like that, this is one place of many to go. I know there are lots of good tutorial sites out there, and like I heard Tom saying earlier today, and I bring up Tom's name all the time because he's our resident president. And you got to give him some recognition for working so hard. So thank you, Tom, so much for doing that.
The position is available.
Even though we really do appreciate you carrying on as long as you are. But anyway, there are all kinds of ways to look at this. But what Tom said earlier was, if you really want to learn something, you can go to like YouTube. And you can say, well, how do I increase the paragraph spacing in Microsoft Word 2016? You can put that whole thing into a YouTube search, and you'll get at least 5 or 10 articles or videos that show you how to do it. And it's really a good way to do it. You can do the same thing in Google. You won't always get the videos, but you'll get some really good articles. And most of it's true, all you have to do is figure out which is true and which is false. That's all you have to do. Okay. But you can go online and do that sort of thing. But your online resources like YouTube and the links that I gave you for this are going to teach you a heck of a lot more than I was able to cover in this session here, even with my technical difficulties and stuff. But it's a really good way to get around virtualization. I mean, virtualization is basically how I'm presenting these other things that aren't working so well. So we also know that virtualization has its own set of problems as well that comes with it. But, so we learned about breadcrumbs, we learned about the ribbon up here, and it's also the same technique that's being used in Word and other Office programs. We learned a little bit about, well, what don't you see over here? Well, down on the bottom here, you don't, we know Documents has some subfolders under it, but it doesn't show up here. But if we look down a little farther down here, we see that this document has this little greater than sign next to it. And if you click on that greater than sign, if there's a subfolder, it will show it. I wanted to do Documents. So Documents has a couple of files in it, but it doesn't have any subfolders underneath it. So that's what these little arrows are. These are like the plus sign that you had in Windows 95. So they've changed up on us a little bit. And then once again, as we go to the different files and things like that, like in Windows, there's all kinds of folders. There's like Windows, and there's System, which contains all kinds of files. Usually goes into Y. There we go. We have System, and we have System 32, which is for 32-bit applications and things like that. Stuff that doesn't make sense to most people, but about a third of it makes sense to me, and that's all that really counts at the moment. If I don't know it, I can find it pretty quick. I like to think of this as being the yellow brick road, because we have all these little yellow bricks along here. But back in the good old days, they used to actually line up like little bricks that Dorothy and the Tin Man would walk along. Now they don't have it that way anymore, so they just kind of they're ruining my presentation. Because here you go from this level here, now you see how you go to the next level underneath that, and then you can go to the next level underneath that, and then this will be the deepest level in this particular part of this tree right here. And you can see that we've gone, the last folder that we're in is this. These are the files that are in English US, that are in the boot folder, in System 32, in Windows, on the C drive, on this PC. So you can see those are how the breadcrumbs bring you back. And if you click in here, it takes you back to a standard way of getting there through the file system from like a command line. You can easily get there using a command, using a command window. Now you notice that we have details are showing up here. If we click on small icons, we'll get little icons, larger icons, really big icons on the list. We'll just list them out. Where would really large icons be helpful? Even when you're looking at your pictures folder. If you have a bunch of pictures and you use your large icons, you can actually see the pictures. Or you'll actually, if you have a bunch of pictures in a folder, it'll actually show you tiny little pictures on your file folder there. So something to play around with. Bottom line is, don't be afraid of the file manager in Windows 10. It's there to help you. It's a little intimidating at first. And you can see one of the reasons it's so darn intimidating is because we were just looking at the profile. And the reason I brought up the profile is because they repeat it 3 times. But they don't tell you that. When I looked at it the first time, I thought, what the heck is going on? What am I seeing here? What are all these things here? And after a while, I finally figured out that quick access is just pointers to things I want to get to quickly. But that's not really where they are on the disk, okay? This PC, these things under here, well, those are just pointers to folders that I like to get to that are on my computer. I like to get to all the time. It's my profile, but that's not where my real profile is. My real profile is down under the users folder here on the C drive, in the users folder. So you have to get used to how Microsoft is going to twist the presentation a little bit each time with the intention that you're going to think they're getting something new. But all you're really getting is something scrambled. Because I can show you menus in Windows 10 that were there in Windows 95 that were there in Windows 3.1, you know, because they're still reusing a lot of those same old windows. So next week, we're going to continue. We're going to take a step a little bit away from the Windows interface, and we're going to talk about networking. Okay? We're going to talk about file networking on the local machine between peers on a small network, and we're going to talk about how networking would work in like a corporation with file servers and things like that. And it's going to be quite interesting, I think, if you haven't seen it before. Plus, we'll be able to show a lot more information of how all the stuff we've been looking at connects to that. We'll be looking at file permissions and how you can protect your files and your folders and things like that. We're going to talk a little bit more about encryption and how to, once again, protect yourself a little more. But each one of these, as you know, it could be a college course, so it can go on for week after week after week.
You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination.